So my name's Ali Cutler. I'm 44 years old. I'm an English teacher at a secondary school. I've been an English teacher for 22 years now. I'm married with 2 teenage children.
This show transforms your life from the inside out, because who doesn't want to live a fulfilling and happy life? Welcome to the Kirsty Show.
So I initially started working with Kirsty as part of a group from the gym that I attend, looking at weight loss and why some people, no matter what they do in terms of food and making correct food choices and exercise, still really struggle to lose weight. And Kirsty was really interested in looking at that from a psychological perspective rather than a sort of a food and lifestyle perspective. So that's how I initially met Kirsty. But actually what I discovered, and probably what wasn't a surprise to Kirsty, but it certainly was to me, was that actually behind a lot of my thought processes, behaviours, I had a lot of other things going on, and really one of my main issues was anxiety, particularly work-related anxiety, sort of overthinking, worrying a lot about not being good enough at my job, or people thinking I wasn't good enough at my job. So low self-esteem, which fed into my anxiety, which then led me into being a bit of a workaholic really, and overcompensating in the amount of work that I did to make up for the fact that I was telling myself that I maybe wasn't good enough at what I was doing. So I've made loads of changes in my life, but I think the 2 most significant changes for me that are the most tangible are, first of all, my ideas about sort of boundaries and what I want, and thinking more about what I want before I make decisions and say yes to things really. So I've always been a people pleaser, and I always thought that was actually quite a good thing really, keeping people happy. That was a nice thing to do. But what actually I discovered, and I suppose probably what I knew deep down but never really wanted to admit, that whilst being a people pleaser, that then put me on the back foot in terms of me personally. So I was always the last on any agenda, which actually then made me quite frustrated and resentful sometimes. And what I discovered was that I wasn't resentful towards the other people for taking my time. I then became cross with myself for not sort of saying no to things, or for making myself feel more tired or more busy and more stressed because I hadn't said no, and having a kind of a negative viewpoint on myself. So one of the tangible differences that I've really noticed is that I'm really aware of boundaries and what makes me happy, or what's better for me in the long run, and not feeling that that's a selfish choice to say no to people, because it's not a selfish thing to do. It's actually a self-preservation thing to do, and something that's a self-respecting decision to make. And I think the first time I actually said no to something that I didn't really want to do, the person just said, "Oh, all right," and then left, and left the room, not in a funny way. And I was really shocked, because I was like, gosh, is it that easy? And the more I've done it, the more I've tested sort of that muscle, the easier it's become. And now I find that rather than instantly saying yes to anything that somebody asks me, I maybe step away and take a few sort of seconds to think about it. Or sometimes I'll just say, do you know what, I need to think about that, I'll get back to you. And that's really benefited me in terms of I don't feel as cross and frustrated that my energy's been spread out across multiple things. And the other major tangible difference for me is that Kirsty has a saying about, does it serve you? And whenever I think of any decisions that I need to make, or things that I feel a bit unsure about, I always kind of have that mantra, does it serve me? And one of the things that I actually discovered quite early on, sort of working with Kirsty, was that as much as I love many aspects of my job as a teacher, one of the things that I found really difficult was the additional responsibility that I had at work. And as much as when I took that job, I thought that was the route I wanted to go down career progression wise, with my children being a bit older, I suddenly realised that actually that wasn't really something that I was not that I wasn't passionate about it, but it didn't sort of ignite my passion and excitement. And I was actually passing on a lot of jobs that I would really like to do to other people when I was then doing jobs that I didn't particularly like, because that was my responsibility. So I took the what seemed like a monumentous decision at the time, but actually looking back now, it wasn't. It was just always meant to be, and decided to give up my responsibility, my extra responsibility at work, and just go back to being a normal main scale teacher, because that's actually what I love doing, and that's what serves me better than being in any sort of management role. So in terms of the sort of problem that I went with, in terms of weight loss, it's taken a while to deal with lots of other things that were inhibiting me as a person, really. But I have now got to a point where I'm much more positive about myself, therefore I'm much more positive about my self-image. And actually, I found that the weight loss isn't such a massive issue. And as a result of that, I'm actually losing weight, following a diet and sort of health plan, but I'm not frustrated with it. Some weeks it works brilliantly, other weeks life happens and things get in the way, and that's fine. Whereas previously that would have been like the end of the world, and it would have been all sort of doom and gloom. And as a result of that sort of positive change in my outlook, the weight loss seems to be sort of better and more straightforward than it has been previously. But I think probably for me, the biggest change has been that change in terms of my levels of anxiety and things, the overthinking and the worrying about things constantly, which was just utterly exhausting. I'd be planning things, like months and weeks and months in advance, and planning and thinking and planning and thinking. And in terms of overthinking, I could relive a one sentence conversation with somebody 100 times over, thinking, oh, maybe they interpreted it like that, or did I say it quite like that, or was that what they meant? And now I still find that sometimes I do it, but I catch myself doing it. And one of the fabulous things about Kirsty's freedom alignment method is that not only does it help you work through things that you've already experienced, it gives you a toolkit that you take with you for managing life in the future. So now when I do find myself getting maybe a bit anxious about certain things, I just stop and I think about the tools that I've got in my toolkit, and I actually quite often find that I just have a little sort of giggle to myself about how ridiculous I was about to be over something that probably A, wasn't a big deal, or B, was something that I was imagining might happen 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line, and 9 times out of 10 when you worry about it, it doesn't happen anyway. So I've now got those tools to stop me from going down those negative sort of roads that I went down before that were quite damaging to my mental health. Since working with Kirsty, my life has completely changed in a variety of ways, really. So from an emotional sort of well-being point of view, I'm much more relaxed. I feel much more in control. I feel like I have more time for me and for doing things that I want to do. And that isn't necessarily more time just for me, but more time to do things with my family that I want to do. And I'm just much calmer and much more positive in my outlook. I've always been sort of glass half empty and sort of doom and gloom and worrying about things, and sort of always seeing the worst case scenario. And I used to sort of joke that I saw the worst case scenario, doom and gloom, in every potential situation. And now I do. I'm grateful for all the amazing things that I've got in my life, and I can see the positives. And even when life throws up things that life often does, I can deal with that much more effectively, and I'm much more positive and see the positive benefits of things that are going on, rather than just looking at the sort of negative, woe is me, oh, this is a nightmare, why is it always happening to me kind of mentality that I maybe had previously. And then the other major change in my life, I've obviously mentioned previously that I was changing my work patterns at work. But when I worked with Kirsty in the Freedom Alignment Method, I just fell in love with the whole idea of it, and the things the tools that you're left with at the end of it, the sort of the scientific background to how the mind works and how that influences your body and the way that your body functions. I just found it absolutely fascinating, fell in love with it. And having worked with sort of young people for 20 plus years, I've really noticed in the past sort of probably 5 or 6 years, the massive increase in anxiety levels amongst not just young people, but people in general outside of school as well. And I just feel that there's so much potential for just helping people deal with life and have a better standard of living as a result of the way that they work through their anxiety. So when Kirsty talked about possible opportunities to train to be a freedom alignment coach, I jumped at the opportunity. So I've spent the past 12 months training with Kirsty and a colleague, Lizzie, to become a freedom alignment coach. I think the most delightful part of the experience is probably two things for me that I would say here. Firstly, is Kirsty herself. She's just such an energetic, enthusiastic, positive person who just oozes positivity, happiness, and radiates that out to everybody that she meets. And I remember the first time I met her thinking, gosh, if I can leave this with an ounce of what she's got, I'll be doing all right. And she's just such a wonderful person to work with, both in terms of her knowledge and her skills and the tools that she gives you to help you with your life, but just as a person, and her zest for life and her sense of abundance is infectious. So that was an amazing part of the experience. And then I think the other sort of delightful part from it was that I was actually working with Kirsty as part of a small group rather than as an individual. And within that small group, we were all from very different walks of life, different ages, different places, and different experiences from the past, and different places that we wanted to get to. And prior to the session, I didn't really know anybody in the group apart from one other lady who I didn't know until I got there was going to be there either. And I remember thinking in the first session, gosh, this is, you know, quite scary, talking potentially about things with people that I don't know. But very quickly, by the end of the first session, we were all very much cemented together in terms of everybody was very supportive and lovely. And we've got a really lovely friendship group out of that group where we celebrate each other's small successes and major successes, not just during the program that we did with Kirsty, but also subsequently. So we all keep in touch, see each other, sort of, we have a WhatsApp group, and we share our little moments of success, triumph, nice little sort of things that we see or hear that remind us of the group, and just sort of getting an extra group of friends as a result of it who are truly supportive and would do anything for you and love to share your success, rather than sometimes in life you get people who prefer to see your downfall rather than your success. And it's always been such a positive, enlightening experience as part of that group, and that's been a real honour to be part of it. So if you were thinking of working with Kirsty, I would say absolutely do it. Whatever you do, don't talk yourself out of it, because it will be the most life-changing thing you will ever experience. It'll be life-changing in terms of how it opens your eyes to the things that you do that you just do out of routine and you maybe never notice yourself. But it'll also change your life in terms of your outlook on life, the way that you handle things. I've taken up meditation practice, which I've kind of often thought I should do that, but never really got it. And you just get so much positivity from working with Kirsty and seeing that there is a different way to how you view the world and how you handle things. And sort of Kirsty guides you through that with the freedom alignment. So I would say absolutely do it. If you're like I was before and a massive overthinker, don't overthink it. Don't worry that whatever you're going to go and say, there's going to be any element of judgment or any element of embarrassment. It really isn't like that. It's just like having a chat almost with a friend. That's how the sessions feel. But then you come away and you've got so much from it and so much to work with and to develop and push you forward. So absolutely 100% do it. It'll change your life.